The good news today comes from Luke chapter 15.
Glory to you, Lord.
Now before I read this, how many of you are freaking out a little bit that that gospel passage is in tinier print and really, really long? Really long. I'm only going to read the first little chunk, and then we're going to let you sit, and then we'll dig into it. Now all the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to him. And the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So he told them this parable. What woman, having 10 silver coins, if she loses one of them, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? When she has found it, she calls together her friends and neighbors, saying, "Rejoice with me, for I have found the coin that I had lost." Just so I tell you, there is joy in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Christ. All right, you may be seated. We'll dig into the rest of that gospel passage here in a little bit, as it is kind of the crux of our music and the direction of our service today. But I wanted to back up a little bit, set us up for what's happening today and the weeks and months ahead with worship here, and then we'll start to dig into this story. So since I have been here, I felt like one of my calls in ministry has been to help find ways to grow West Union. When I have come here, I have found West Union to be a place of vibrancy, with individuals having a great, deep faith, wanting to love each other and serve this community. It's been one of the comments that I've consistently gotten from other colleagues, from the other churches I've served, is, "Wow, your church continues to connect with the community, continues to serve, continues to find ways to reach out and to be the hands and feet of Jesus, even in amongst COVID and the challenges you might face." And I was like, they are. It is amazing. So there's a vibrancy within West Union here that I'm excited to be a part of. But I also know that there are areas in which we could grow, that as people discover what's happening here, what God is up to here at West Union, they're going to want to be a part of what is taking place here, because God is doing something amongst individuals and amongst each other. And they're going to want to be a part of that and connect to it. And so I feel like part of my call here is to help connect us into that. And so that's why I'm really excited, partnering with Ms. Abby and our other parents of children ministry. How do we connect what happens in worship with Sunday school on an even deeper level? Right? How do we really help our children grow in their faith? And so for the whole next year, our children, during children's station time, and with me during the service, they're going to be digging into just the person of Jesus. Just who Jesus was, what he taught, where he went, and what happened after his death and resurrection. They're going to be really digging into just the person of Jesus, so that as they get older, the rest of the Bible stories can make sense looking through the person of Jesus as their lens. So on Sunday mornings then, for worship time, I'm going to be helping them dig into that story a little bit with the children's conversation. And then we, as a community of faith, will just be digging into the person of Jesus for this next year. So we're starting with what Jesus taught. That's where we're starting with these next few weeks, is digging into a little bit of what Jesus taught. Eventually, then, who was the person of Jesus? So today's story has a group of people gathered together. And you've kind of got three parties. You've got Jesus, sinners and tax collectors, and the scribes and the Pharisees. So you've got these three different groups of people gathered together. Jesus is hanging out with sinners and tax collectors. And the Pharisees and the scribes, they're complaining about this. They don't like it. So he tells three stories: the parable of the lost lamb, the parable of the lost coin, and then he tells the story of the prodigal son. So these are stories that might be familiar to you. And the Gospel of Luke does this a lot. When Jesus tries to teach something, he usually says it twice, right? Because the first time you don't really listen, and then the second time you're like, oh, okay, that's what you were talking about. Jesus really wants us to understand this story. So in the Gospel of Luke, he tells it 3 different times. You've heard the second one, the parable of the lost coin, and now we're going to, in a little bit here, we'll hear the parable of the lost son. or the parable of the angry older brother, or the parable of the father who reaches out his hands to receive his son. But I want to dig in first into the dynamics. What is taking place that makes these Pharisees so upset? Who are these scribes and Pharisees? Sometimes they get a bad light, but honestly, I probably look and act the most like scribes and Pharisees. The scribes, the Pharisees, these are the people who follow the law. They love God. They go to worship regularly. This is what they do. They are the upstanding citizens of their community. That's who they are. And they see Jesus hanging out with sinners and tax collectors. You could also say like prostitutes and the IRS. You could also say like, right? You could also say like the rioters, protesters, and the loan sharks, right? You could also say the folks who live over there and the folks who live over here. There's a professor at Luther Seminary who just describes the sinners and the tax collectors as those people. And maybe you've said this yourself before. Maybe you've described a group of other people as those people, right? The people that aren't you, right? Those people. And that's what the scribes and Pharisees are all so upset about. Jesus, this upstanding citizen, this upstanding traveling preacher, the one who at the beginning they were really surprised about. As a little boy, they were like, wow, Jesus is teaching us so much. But now he's hanging out with the sinners and the tax collectors. So he helps them understand what is taking place by telling these stories. That second story, the parable of the lost coin, does something really unique. Has anybody here ever lost something before? Anybody? Raise your hand. Be proud. Or not proud. You should. No. You've lost something. Thanks, Dave. Yes. Yeah. His hand, leave it up there. I've lost things. In fact, I am known in my family as the loser of things. Take a look at my hands. Do you see a wedding ring on there? Nope. That was my second wedding ring. And now lost. The first one, I know, like, oh no. The first one was like gold and it had like a couple diamonds on it. The second one was like tungsten or like something really cheap. But it had a cute engraving on the inside that said, "You'll never lose me." And now it's gone. So I don't know where it is. So I am the loser of things, and I have been that woman many times. Digging around, scrounging around, turning on the lights, sending the kids out to look around and try to find stuff that's missing. And if I find that wedding ring, I will celebrate, and I will ask everyone to join me in celebration as we have found what was lost. But here's the thing I have learned about losing things. That ring is not going to roll back to me. That ring is not sitting there like, "Oh, dear Adam, please come find me," and then I will magically find the ring. In the story of the coin does not actually do any repenting, does it? The coin doesn't call out to the woman and say, "Here I am yours, please claim me." The coin is just lost. And the woman does the work and goes out and finds it. She claims it. She looks and she rejoices. And the coin is just part of the journey. There are folks who are just lost. And we can rest assured, as followers of the way of love, that God is out there looking for, finding, and claiming people without them even calling out for it. God is amongst people. God is amongst those people. Whoever you might want to put in that category. God is with those people too. Finding them, claiming them, and rejoicing when even we don't know it's happening. So then Jesus tells another story. One to help us understand the first a little bit, but also for those of us who are maybe the 9 little points who didn't roll off the table, right? The pieces of things that haven't been lost. Jesus tells another story. And so let's hear it. Jesus said, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to the father, 'Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me.' So the father divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country. And there he squandered his property in desolate living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough to spare? But here I am, dying of hunger. Will I get up and go? I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran out and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly, bring out the robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and get the fatted calf and kill it. And let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' They began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field. And when he came and approached the house, he heard the music and the dancing." Maybe it was polka. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. The slave replied, "Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he got him back safe and sound." Then he became angry. This older brother became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But the son, the older son, answered his father, "Listen, for all these years I've been working for you like a slave, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him." Then the father said to him, "Son, you're always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we have had to celebrate and rejoice, because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found." He's lost and he has been found, and so it is time to celebrate. Now, I could give about 3 or 4 more sermons just on this gospel passage, just on the story of the prodigal son, but I can smell the sweet rolls, and they smell delicious, and I'm hungry. And I've also got years and years to we can dig into this story at another time. But I want to give one little bit of a perspective here, kind of tying it all back into what was going on. In the parable of the coin, you have the story of the lost, right? That God goes to the one who is lost, claims it, and rejoices. Let's just then look at this through the eyes of the Pharisees, or the scribes, or the me's, or the us is. The eyes of the older brother, who never left the father, who always stayed home, who did his work. And we've got a young boy here. His name is Miles Muhlenhard. He's a really great kid. And he just won champion at the Carver County, right? One of his caps? Yeah, he did. Yeah. Give him a hand for that, right? and as I was preparing for this message today, I was thinking a lot about Miles, right? Because he's got the champion calf. He's an older brother. His younger brother's maybe a little different than Miles. That's the mom. She says it's okay then. Right? Miles is also awesome. Miles is really great too. But the older brother here, like, just look at it through his perspective. His younger brother demands half the money, which basically means, Father, I wish you were dead. Right? Because when you're dead, then I get all the money. Just give it to me now so I can go. Right? And he witnesses that, but he stays at home and he continues to work. He continues to stay with the Father. He continues to be a good citizen, to follow the law, to do what God or his Father has been asking of him. And then he's out working in the field. He's doing the work. He's doing the work of the church. And he hears this music happening from out in the field. He's like, what's going on? And somebody tells him, your fatted calf, your prize-winning champion calf has been slaughtered for your younger brother. Like, what? How dare you? One, you didn't invite me to the party, right? I was out at work. Nobody brought me in. Two, I worked really hard for that calf, and you've just killed it for this kid who has wasted everything. You wasted it for those people. Why? This is your son. Do you hear that? That difference? When the son says, your son did these things. And then the father looks at him and he says, your brother has come home. The father asks him to change his perspective, to not see his younger brother as those people or the other or the different or the outside of these walls or the outside of my world. He says, see him as your brother. Celebrate with me for your brother. Love him like a brother. Care for him. And that's hard sometimes, as the older brother. But the good news here is we are always with the Father. The good news here is if you are the person that has felt lost before, God is out there, racing out with arms wide open, not even bothering to listen to your story or your repentance, but with arms wide open saying, you are loved, just as you are. Come, celebrate. And if you're an older brother, there's a call to love the younger. If you're an older brother, you're invited to the party and to the celebration. If you're an older brother, know that all that God has